Welcome back to the BetCanada channel. Katie Caldwell and Jeff Lloyd here with you. We continue our division preview series. So, Jeff, let's get into the AFC West. Is this the year someone finally takes the division from the Chiefs? Who's knocking on that door for you? We'll start with the Chiefs.
I'm not sure we're there just yet. I
Okay,
do.
I
I just,
know. Had to
and
ask.
I'll be honest. And see, I am one of these, and like, because even it came down last year where everybody, well, I want the Eagles. I'm so sick of the Chiefs, and
Hmm.
it was like, well, wait a minute. Everybody loved the Chiefs until maybe it became, the Chiefs, Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift, and then all of a sudden, maybe people weren't. It was like, well, who cares? Like, and the
Exactly.
other thing is, though, is I like history. I like
Mm.
great franchises. So what the Chiefs are doing, even maybe necessary of, obviously not my favorite, but how can you turn a blind eye to what is like a sustainable, dominant franchise? You just can't turn away from that.
A lot of people
Um,
are sick and tired of it, but one of an overarching principle for me is that sometimes greatness can be really boring in the moment. Like I feel like with Tom Brady and the Patriots, we were sick of the same thing every single year, and now that we're removed from that, and you look back, you go, "Oh, the greatest run of all time." Like I feel like I do a NFL and F1 podcast, and we just had the same conversation about Max Verstappen. Was it boring when he was winning every single race by a minute and a half? Yes, but sometimes greatness can be boring. So I think that's what it is with the Chiefs right now is we're starting to see the dynasty aspect of it all, and not to use the D word, but that's a principle of mine is that yeah, sometimes it is boring in the moment, but you still have to appreciate it for what it is because they are a great team and they have been.
there is, I couldn't agree more with you in that respect. And I think the thing that I kind of look at here, and when I look at this Chiefs team, now you go back, the Super Bowl, what happened? They could not block the Philadelphia Eagles pass rush. Patrick Mahomes sacked 6 times, harassed. It was just a overall bad, bad day. So you look at the
Yes.
Chiefs, what's the first thing they did? All right, we've been trying to fix this left tackle position for a couple of years now. It's not working. We had a guy who we drafted in 2024 to be our future left tackle.
Hmm.
He ain't it. So they didn't even give him a year. They gave him like half a season and said, kicked him in the inside, took a veteran guard and put the veteran guard at left tackle and said, your job is to protect the franchise, the number one player in the NFL right now, in Patrick
Hmm.
Mahomes. Obviously, in the Super Bowl, they got as far as they could with that. What did they do? They go out, drafted one of the top left tackles available in the draft, and Josh Simmons out of Ohio State is coming back from a knee injury, has already participated a little bit, so it looks like he's a full-fledged go for the Chiefs come day one of this season. Kelsey coming back, I think, is and was key.
That's huge.
And I think, and this is where maybe I think people misconstrue it. He does not have to be Travis Kelsey, 100 receptions, 1,000
No.
yards. The thought and the presence of Travis Kelsey being on that field
Yep.
is tremendous for this offense because it deserves a certain amount of respect.
He's such a
And
big part of the culture of that team.
yep, but if he's there, he has to be covered. So
Hmm.
now, how do you cover Xavier Worthy and his 4.21 40, 4.19, whatever in the world it is? You
Yeah.
get Rashee Rice back, and I don't think anybody really understands the impact a player like Rashee Rice was having for this team a couple of years ago. Obviously, his troubles off the field, then
Hmm.
his ultimate injury. And the thing with Rice is he's not necessarily a wide receiver and he's not necessarily a tight end. He's another one of these 6'3", north of 225. I don't call them I mean, they're big slots. You can't cover them with corners because they push on them and they just toss them away, honestly, like gnats in the summertime. So he's really a fun player for them. Hollywood Brown, another guy who's probably a
Hmm.
4.3 speed guy. All the players they drafted, Jalen Royals, they have Juju Smith Schuster. There are just so many weapons there for Mahomes. The one concern I'm going to have is probably the running game a little bit.
Okay.
Isaiah Pacheco, he's not the greatest athlete. And the thing is, he runs with such a physicality to him. It's kind of his own worst enemy because he runs with so much physicality that he ends up missing some time. And then what they got out of Kareem Hunt last year, look, that was, basically finding the fountain of youth. Kareem
Yeah.
Hunt he never really was this great athlete. He was a really good football player, but
Hmm.
each year just a little bit comes off. And I don't think they're going to get the impact out of Hunt this year that they certainly got out of Hunt last year. It's certainly, the defense is huge to this, because when you mention Mahomes and you mention Kelsey, you certainly mention Chris Jones,
Of
who
course.
has
Yep.
been the defensive stalwart, dynasty, run, legacy, whatever term you want to throw on what the Chiefs have been late. He is the guy. Karlaftis is a nice pass rusher.
Mhm.
Mike Dana is a nice pass rusher. And again, I will say the Chiefs are another one of these teams that start right around the end of September and start saying, all right, comb every roster, get
Mhm.
on every phone. What do we think we need? Let's get these calls in place. So if we're ready to make the move, it's snap, we're done. We can get whatever we need at any given point. Now, the secondary, the corners, Trent McDuffie has been outstanding for them.
Mhm.
And, there are players that are on teams like this that never get their due. And look, and it happens because there's other bigger names. And I think certain guys are like, hey, that's fine, man. Nobody's got, just let me do my thing. I'm more
Yeah.
than fine with it. I get paid well. So, for the Chiefs, and it's going to be, just you always have to change a little bit. And well,
Mm.
what's going to be the difference in Kansas City this year? Does, a second tier defensive player that we don't talk about very often take a jump for them? Is it the no-name guy who's maybe not part of this team yet that could be coming in and, obviously over the summer or before the trade deadline in October? Um, because I think for right now, I think the Chiefs, the biggest issue is probably themselves. And
Mhm.
last year was different because we've seen years where the Kansas City Chiefs just smoked through the regular season.
That's not what was happening.
Last year, last year it was literally,
One
everyone
possession game every
well,
game.
and most of the time, I mean, you, me, everybody, nobody was watching Chiefs games in the fourth quarter. It was like, all right, well,
No.
what's the better game right now? And there it was every game, week in,
Yep.
week out. And you got to the last 2 minutes, and it was, and I think that was one thing that probably made last year pretty impressive because
Mhm.
in years past they lost some of those games, but it just seemed last year every week they kind of came out on the right side of it. Playoffs went pretty easy, and then just Philadelphia just unleashed the dogs
Yeah.
on that offensive line, and there was nothing Kansas City could do. But again, for where it's at now,
Mhm.
I'd have to see some miraculous play and a lot of other quarterbacks reach the ultimate level.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like we've been talking about here. A lot of these guys are on the level of greatness, but are you
Mhm.
on the ultimate, the Hall of Fame level that Mahomes has proven to be? And until we see one of these guys take yet another jump, and sometimes it
Mhm.
seems unfair to say that to any of these guys, you have to believe that the Chiefs are, the top dogs still in the AFC.
I feel like when it comes to the Chiefs not winning the division, it's one of those situations where I'll believe it when I see it. But my gut is kind of saying maybe this is the year, just based on what we talked about with if even a few of those games go the other way at the end of a game, like they had so much luck on their side as well. It felt like they had just this dark magic around the team that no matter what, they were going to win it right at the end. Seeing what happened in the Super Bowl, and maybe a few of those games don't go their way every single time this year, to me, I look at the Chargers and the Broncos both loudly knocking on that door. We'll start with the Chargers. So, man, year 2 of Jim Harbaugh, like he has their running back situation and their offensive tackle set. And everybody that knows Harbaugh knows he just wants to run the damn ball. That's all he wants to do. I think that's, and then when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert that can also air it out too, it feels like they're really starting to put it together, and it feels like they've really built that culture there where heading into this season, I am hyped to watch the Chargers. I think they could be knocking on the door. So we'll start with them. But what are your Chargers thoughts?
With the Chargers, and I kind of agree with you. And I think some people, and look, obviously with Jim Harbaugh, there's always the onus, of running the football,
Yes.
playing 11 on 11, physical, my best 11 against your best 11. I think my best 11 are better.
Hmm.
But I also think, and this is certainly evident, first round selection of Amari Hampton. You put a free agent deal together with Najee Harris, who left the Steelers. You look at both these backs, and the first thing I'm thinking is, well, there's 35 plays of the Chargers each week. You didn't draft Hampton in the first round to not give
Yeah.
him the ball 15 to 20 times.
Hmm.
You didn't sign Najee Harris to not give him 10 to 15 carries a week. So that right there tells me, run, pass. you're probably operating anywhere on a 55 to 45, percent split as to, which one you're going to do.
Mhm.
It'll be game predicative. If the Chargers are winning, they're going to run the ball more. If the Chargers are losing, Justin Herbert's probably going to throw it a little more.
Yeah.
But then you look at that and you go, well, you got Lad McConkey. You obviously you have Quentin Johnson, who for as bad as his rookie year was, certainly found a way to be more productive in year two. And it
Mhm.
wasn't just bigger overall numbers, but it was money numbers. I think it was 8 or 9 touchdown
Yeah.
receptions. And look, not everybody's going to catch 100 passes. It's all more about what you do with them. You brought back Mike Williams. I'm not seeing that move as much, but I am seeing that in the second round, you drafted Trey Harris out of Ole
Yeah.
Miss. A lot of people that I read and talked about Trey Harris and what type of guy they think he is in the NFL, it was Mike Williams, former Clemson wide receiver that was originally drafted by the Chargers. The offensive line is good, obviously. And then you kind of get to where you're at on the defense with this team. And I think one of the biggest advantages this defense is going to have is there's going to be times where this defense is going to get to sit on the sidelines for 6, 7 minutes, maybe 8 minutes of game time.
That's
They
a
are
good
going
point.
to get to be
Yeah.
very well rested because
Mhm.
that is kind of why Jim does this is, I want my defense to not have to be out there for
Yeah.
55, 65 plays. And the thing is the more they're out there, the more you're subbing out. And now you're playing your
Right.
second tier players, which obviously nobody has the ability to do that type. Khalil Mack, just a revelation at this point, honestly. He's not supposed to still be starting. He's not supposed to be still contributing double digit sacks per year,
Yeah.
but yet there he is. Dalen Henley, their linebacker last year, I don't think I've seen a guy that nobody knew make as many tackles as he did last year. Just an absolute monster season for him. Derwin James is still an absolute beast, a guy that's honestly
Yes.
built like a edge linebacker at 6'3", probably 235, but has all the athletic ability in the world to give you so much more than that. They're they're going to get tested. And I'm telling you right now, for the Chargers, you don't feel that anybody else is your equal. Your equal, in your opinion, is the Chiefs. Let's
Right.
let's go do this. And you look at it, and there are certainly certain aspects. Who has the best running back? The Chargers probably do. Is Lad McConkey probably a better overall wide receiver than anybody that Kansas City has? I think last year probably told us that that is true.
Mhm.
So the gap is certainly getting closer, in my opinion, and that's certainly good, in my opinion, for the Chargers. And then you bring in that Harbaugh factor, and look, everywhere
Yeah.
he's gone, he's been successful. Went
Oh, yeah.
to the Super
Both of
Bowl with the
them.
49ers,
Yeah.
national championship with Michigan. You
Yep.
don't believe, that there's not going to be a point here where it's an AFC championship or even a Super Bowl appearance for the Chargers.
He builds that
That is
culture.
what that is what Jim gives you.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be a fun ride. And I think I almost, in a little bit, I do kind of feel bad for Justin Herbert because I think there's any other team in the NFL where they would just say Justin Herbert is Josh Allen. But I think the
Yeah.
Chargers are doing it a little bit differently and saying, hey, because it's a probability thing, though. Hey, if we're going to
Mm.
throw it 40 times a week, there's some chances things are going to go wrong. Either, there's going to be a strip sack, there's going to be more probability for turnover.
Yeah.
But, if we can eliminate that and then we start to, run more, slip in some more play action. Justin Herbert is a lot better with his legs than anybody wants to give us, credit
Mhm.
to. He's not Josh Allen good, but that he's still really good with his legs and can give you a lot with his running
Mhm.
ability. I think the Chargers certainly are a playoff team this year. I think they are a better team that lost in Houston last year in the playoffs. I think they're just going to maybe do it a little bit different this year, more
Mhm.
physicality, more running, better defense. Jim Harbaugh football.
Quick pause. If you haven't subscribed to the BetCanada YouTube channel, you can do so below. It's free and it helps support our channel so we can keep bringing you NFL and NHL content. Now, back to the show. Oh, I'm so excited for year 2 to see that. Man, this division too, I wouldn't be shocked if 3 of these teams made it into the playoffs. Like, the AFC just feels so loaded yet again. The Broncos, I'm hyped to watch this year. I love their defense. I'm so excited to see the continuation of this offense. Do you like I feel like these top 3 teams, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos finished second. I wouldn't be super surprised if they were contending for first, maybe third. Like, what are your thoughts on the Broncos this year?
I think if I'm the Broncos, I'm the Chargers, and I'm the Chiefs, hey, it's great to say we won the AFC West.
Mhm.
I just wanna make sure I punched my ticket to the playoffs, and I'll
Yeah.
worry about all that nonsense then. Because look, obviously, all 3 went last year.
Mhm.
So certainly, that is certainly the goal for them. Nobody wants to take a step back and, "Hey, if I gotta split with the Chiefs, if I have to split with the Chargers, that's all well and good. Did
Mhm.
I make the playoffs?" And we'll play them one more time, and that'll ultimately define how any of this worked for any of these teams this year. Now, I think there's certainly for the Broncos, and this is one where I kinda have a little bit of concern is I think the wide receiver core, I look at what other teams in this division have, and I think Denver's a little light.
Okay.
Cortland Sutton is your number 1 wide receiver, and I'm not a knock, but it's not on the level of what the number 1 receiver is for some of these other teams. And, if you're trying to get Bo Nix there, wouldn't you
Mhm.
say, "Well, let's get him the big ticket wide receiver while he's on the rookie deal, and then once
I
he's
thought they
on his
would've.
big
You're
deal,
right.
then maybe he's gonna have to take the sacrifice and develop someone into another level."
Mhm.
Offensive line is certainly a good unit. You look at the and now it's interesting, J.K. Dobbins goes from the Chargers to the Broncos. So
Yeah.
now obviously there's that scenario. I think somebody that nobody's kind of talking about. Everybody talks about the selection of RJ Harvey to the Broncos. Last year, I thought Denver drafted a guy I loved out of Notre Dame in Audric Estime and never really got anything cooking last year with
Mm.
the Broncos. And the reason I really like Estime is keep in mind, he played, I think it was up until week 2 last year, is when he turned 21.
Mm.
So we can, I mean, oh, well, he struggled as a rookie. He was 21. Like,
Yeah.
that's okay. And like, if he was 23 and you told me he struggled as a rookie, I'd be like, okay, that's not doesn't bode well. He was
Yeah.
21. He will not be 22
Mm.
until like week 2. But I look at Audric
Wow.
Estime, and this is the guy that you say 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Can I give you 7 carries? Can you get
Mm.
me 3 first downs? Do I clinch a drive with a guy like that? And that's the type of body he has, physical runner, and I think he could be successful there. Dre Greenlaw, they bought on the defensive side of the ball and was a huge, huge part of San Francisco.
Yeah,
The
I can't
question, of
believe
course,
San Francisco let him go.
I think the problem is for what San Francisco is gonna have to pay, I don't know what percentage I get of Dre Greenlaw anymore after the Super Bowl injury.
I
And
know.
so
I
it's
get
obviously a
it,
tough thing
but
to gauge.
yeah.
When it's a lot of money like that, you have
Mhm.
to make difficult decisions.
I do
But
get
you
it.
look at the rest, the secondary, Surtain, Riley Moss, great, great players.
Mhm.
Hufnaga, another player they brought over from San Francisco. I think Denver's there. And look, I think Kansas City wins the AFC West. I think the Chargers and the Broncos both make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Does they do they all finish within 1 game of each other? 2 games of each other? I think that's certainly a realistic because I think, obviously most of them are gonna play all the same teams,
Yeah.
so I think they'll all kinda beat the common opponents. Then it kinda comes down to what they each do against each other.
Yeah.
And again, it'll lead to probably what will be some fun rematches, certainly in January within the playoffs.
Mhm. And how about the Raiders? I feel like the Raiders are one. They're just in such a tough division. I'm really excited about Geno Smith. I love Pete Carroll. They have some good weapons. Like, I'm excited to watch Brock Bowers again. To me, it just feels like there's still too many holes on this team, coupled with they're in a very tough conference, a very tough division. What's your ceiling on the Raiders? Because to me, they feel like a clear fourth place within in this division, but I still think there's going to be reasons that they will be watchable. I think they'll still be a bit interesting to watch.
Well, I think the thing is, and this is probably a way you can phrase it is, The Raiders could be successful in 20 the Raiders could be a success in 2025, but not be successful. Meaning,
I
they
like
don't have
that.
the record, you know what I'm saying? And because you have
Yeah.
to look at what's in front of them.
Mhm.
And, the Chiefs twice a year certainly is not easy. The Chargers twice a year is certainly not easy. Of course, the Broncos, all of their home games, and this is the thing, because you're now in Vegas, you are a huge like, if you are a fan of teams and you wanna go see your team play on the road, and you look and say, "Well, we're playing in Vegas this year," what's the game you're saying, "Well, let's take that trip."
Of
You don't
course.
people will go to Vegas regardless, and now you can say, "Oh, well, while we're there, we can also see our favorite team play."
Yeah.
Well, I think the Raiders are in a little bit of a tough situation because they were a great draw for opposing crowds to come to their home games.
That's
So I
true.
don't know, and this was years ago, the black hole and all of that went on when they played in Oakland was huge for them, but I don't know if they're ever going to get a true home field advantage in the destination that they're in.
Mhm.
Um,
That's the nature of
Certainly,
Vegas. Yeah.
of course, the Geno thing definitely, when it first went down, kind of threw me.
Me
Um,
too.
Because, I think Geno and maybe we should stop calling it the Sam Darnold, and maybe we should have called it the Geno Smith, right? But, because Geno Smith, it just seemed like he had just entrenched himself, and kind of became, the figure there in Seattle, and obviously played extremely well in his time there.
Mhm.
And of course, reunites, of course, with Pete Carroll, which is a whole other weird situation because how long is Pete doing this for? I think we all
Yeah.
felt Pete was done. I mean, he was forever at USC. He was forever with Seattle, and we figured that was that. And now here he is, all of a sudden now in Vegas, of course. The Austin Genty selection I liked. I'm not sure the impact because how often are you gonna run the ball? I mean, first off, you're gonna have
Yeah.
6 games a year that are gonna be a struggle for you, which means Geno Smith more likely is gonna have to be the difference in those games.
Mm.
I don't know if you're gonna necessarily be in the advantage to say, "Well, we can give the ball to Ashton Genty 25 times this week." Well, you're already down 14-3. So that plan might be out the window, in my opinion. Max Crosby, just an absolute, absolute fantastic player.
He's so fun
And
to
again,
watch.
he is, and I think it is his passion for it and his motor just, really, really kind of blows you away.
Yeah.
Um, Linebackers aren't necessarily so great. Darian Porter was a selection of theirs at the cornerback position. I truly think he can be a difference for them. They brought in Eric Stokes, was a guy that flamed out in Green Bay. I don't know how that necessarily works out for them. The defense overall is just they spent a lot of money years ago on Christian Wilkins. That's never really done anything. I think that's going to be the ultimate issue for the Raiders is they're just not going to have enough defense. And it's going to be, and that's going to be where this season goes and is the decision that Pete Carroll is a long time. And it's hard to say long time with Pete Carroll, obviously,
Yeah.
because you don't want to start building a Pete Carroll team and then, you build the roster for Pete Carroll, and all of a sudden, it's not a very long tenure
Mhm.
for Pete Carroll. And, I feel bad. And again, I think that's why I'm using, the Raiders can be successful without it being a success, is
Mm.
because you're just in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Everybody in that division is already probably a year or 2 or 3 ahead of you roster wise.
Yeah.
And, how do you compete with that?
It's hard, and I'm thrown off with Pete sometimes because he has such a youthful energy, and we've seen so much success with him, but then you have to be realistic of, "Oh, this is a man in his mid-70s," like, it just can't go on forever, but, yeah, I'm definitely fooled by the youthful energy, but you're right. Raiders fans do have to be realistic about what the future of that looks like.
There's no question, and it's, and again, it's just difficult for a franchise like that, and, a lot of all the decisions they've made are really going to make and they can't screw it up. They've got the
Mhm.
beautiful building, they've got the great location. The team is going to be extremely financially sound in a few years. It's, you just can't screw it up.
Yeah.
You just can't. It's on such a path that it's gonna be such a money-making operation, which will probably lead to the Raiders being a more successful team 4 or 5 seasons from now
Mm.
because it'll be such a draw, and all the other things that are gonna go around it. But right now, they're just kind of at the wrong end of the rope as far as, they're at the bottom of it. And, Mahomes is in the prime and Bo Nix is in year
Mhm.
2 and Herbert is, just starting to hit his prime. For the Raiders, it's a really difficult position because it seems like they could be stuck there for a few years.